John Summers is the motoring historian. He was a company car thrashing technology sales rep that turned into a fairly inept sports bike rider. Hailing from California, he collects cars and bikes built with plenty of cheap and fast, and not much reliable. On his show, he gets together with various co hosts to talk about new and old cars, driving, motorbikes, motor racing, and motoring travel.
Good day, good morning, good afternoon. It's John Summers, the motoring historian, with his erstwhile school friend, Mark Gammy. How you doing, Mark?
Pretty good, dude. How are you?
All right, all right. Just breaking down that third wall in the way that we normally like to do. You and I have just spent 2 hours trying to line this up because we've got a new puppy, and I'm a kind of shit puppy dad, if the
Well,
truth
we
is
haven't,
told,
in the sense that you and I don't have one. You have one in the royal we.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We, as in my family.
Yeah.
And the royal we would be applicable because the dog is a corgi, isn't it? Which I know as an Englishman living in California is faintly fucking ridiculous. But I'm a ridiculous kind of person. And in fact, right, that has turned out to be the perfect segue for the way that I was going to start our call today. And it was with this that my wife tells a story about how I was costing her money before we even met. Do you know this story?
I may have heard it. I can't recall it off cuff.
You may. Well, you will remember my side of it. You won't remember her side of it. So you remember that we were both offered a job in California with this student travel company in the summer of, I think, 2004 or 2005, one of those two. Anyway, well, there was a training course that began at the beginning of July. And they said to me, if you work really hard on your visa stuff and go really fast, you might be able to get, the paperwork in on time. And I was like, yeah. Thinking, really want to spend a month where I know I've got a job and I'm going to be earning again. Really want to spend a month in my flat in Ealing using my Jigsaw to go and explore Neolithic sites of southern England, right? Because you could. So what I wanted to do was, or what I did was I slow pedaled the paperwork, and every morning or every other morning, really, it probably wasn't every morning, but a lot of the time I got up and I would look on, you know how it is. You look on the map, you see the brown sites, whichever Neolithic site wasn't there, I'd just look for a nearby town, and then I'd get up and be out of London and at the Neolithic site as the dog walkers were there, and then I'd have like a lardy cholesterol breakfast at a transport cafe or something, and then roll back up to town. Well, the story is this: that I'm rolling back up to town one day. I'm in the right hand lane of the M4, that sort of Newbury, Swindon kind of road, right? Your neck of the woods now. I'm in the right hand lane, rolling along about 90. A guy comes up on my left hand side on a Jigsaw thou and stopped for a minute and then took off. And I did that. And it was the first time I'd ever done that, where you meet somebody on the road and you just take off after them and ride with them. And I remember two things about that ride. The first one was that there was a BMW 740 in the right hand lane, and it was there for ages and ages and ages and wouldn't move aside. And when it eventually moved aside, he pulled up alongside and then kicked the door and put a dent in the door, in the rear door, where the freeway, where the motorway goes, where the M4 goes under the M25. Often if you're driving west into London, often on that piece of road where you're on the M4, but all the M25 traffic's got off, but all the M25 traffic hasn't yet got on. There's that little section under the 150 mile an hour on my 600, and he was leaving me for dead. Right? I was like, I'm going to drop off him when we come to the North Circular, because I was living in Ealing at the time. But he came off at the North Circular as well. And we got through Chiswick, and at the first set of traffic lights, like as we were, on the way round the North Circular, I can't remember, I don't know exactly which, we weren't yet at Ealing, but we were on the way there. I rolled up alongside him at the light, and he put up the visor, and his eyes were ice blue, and he was our age now, like 50 plus. And he said, I just picked it up at the dealership. Fucking awesome. Visor down, the lights changed, and he had it away, and that was the whole end of the experience. And I'm, oh man, it's just the reason why Suzuki GSX-Rs are different, right?
I'll go get my food. 2 seconds. So, why was that costing Dana money?
Oh, bollocks. Yeah, as usual, the story's totally disjointed and unfinished, isn't it? Why was that costing Dana money? It's gold. The reason it was costing her money was when they said, you got to rush to get on the July training course. She did. She got her dad to pay for an extra, pay for the rent, and moved out here early. So the plane flight was expensive, but she also paid for a month's rent, or her dad paid for a month's rent in the apartment, which which when she arrived, they were then like, oh, we're delaying the training course. And the reason that they delayed the training course was me, because I had not been asked to get my visa in on time. Yeah.
Yeah, I can believe that. That has the air of authenticity to it.
It's God's honest truth.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't doubting you. I mean, there's no question about it.
You're aware that nowadays our episodes are broken up by music, where once there just used to be a choppy edit. Now we have so the episode, that last one, episode 14 that we did with Greep and the Vans.
Yeah.
That one, I did all with Slayer, you remember?
Mm-hmm.
This time I thought I would do all German power metal. Excellent. I've even planned out what I'm going to do. So we've got Warlock mostly for this episode, then with just a little bit of a Scorpions deep cut and a little bit of Scanner to finish up. But just on the theme of the German power metal, what are your thoughts on German power metal?
Is Running Wild German power metal? I'm pretty sure it is.
Fuck yeah, it is. But they're getting their own episode.
I'm a bit offended that you haven't included any Running Wild.
They're getting their own episode.
Oh, okay.
They deserve their own episode.
Yeah, no, I can dig it. I mean, yeah, dude, Hypertrace is a cracking album. No, Warlock, Burning the Witches, etc. I got a lot of time for one of the best bands that for a long time, the only, for me at least, decent heavy metal band with a female vocalist. Not that I had any particular prejudice against female vocalists, but she did a really good job. I can't remember what the chick's name was.
Doro Pesch.
There you go.
But yeah, I quite agree. Lita Ford, no good in comparison. No. I mean, I like
some decent ones now.
I like her as a person and all of that, but Doro truly rocked. And the samples that we've played here perfectly illustrate the way that her vocals are like Tom Araya's. It's like a third lead guitar.
Yeah, she had proper range, didn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but but whoever wrote the guitar riffs, my word.
Yeah, pretty sick. No, I got a lot of time for the Germans. What I also find quite amusing about the Germans, and it's none of their fault, is that quite often the lyrics that are presumably written in German, well, maybe written in English, then, but German, their English is certainly better than my German, end up sounding just a little bit the wrong side of the cakey cheesy. Whereas if they'd perhaps been written by a native speaker, they would still sound, heavy metal, but perhaps not quite as some of the stuff off Running Wild's albums when they're talking about pirates and stuff, they're just a little bit too.
It has the feeling of fantasy literature written by a 12-year-old, doesn't it?
Yeah,
exactly. There's a Warlock track, "Hateful Guy," which I always think is has that kind of it has the feeling of a non-mother tongue speaker about it, but
Mm-hmm.
I think they wrote the songs in English, and I think that it was the way that so many heavy metal bands talk about the heavy metal as if it's like an independent entity that has a life force of its own, like a sort of country that we're citizens of, if you like.
Cakey lyrics.
Yeah, and the fact that if it's not mother tongue, it has look, I feel like a lot of these heavy metal bands, they wanted to write something similar to what Dio was writing, but it ends up coming across as 12-year-old fantasy literature.
Yeah,
which is a segue for us to plug our book again, isn't it? The Chronicles of Halvar and Clarence by J.D. Gammy.
Yeah.
My word, get to Amazon and buy it straight away if you have not already, and write us a review, even if it's crap. Even if you hated us, write a review. Mark, on the subject of even if you hated us, write a review. At the end of last year, I did that International Motor Racing Research Center conference. I always do that. They streamed it for the first time. Well, not actually for the first time, for the second time, but we won't let's not get into the details of that exactly. It was, you had a chance to participate in it remotely. What were your thoughts?
To be honest, I listened to about 10 minutes of your piece, and I can't remember what happened, but I haven't gone back to it. I've saved the link. I think my feedback was therefore rather cursory and more to do with, it felt a bit like a bit harsh, but I felt you probably needed to be a bit more you reading it rather than sounding like you were reading it, if you know what I mean.
The tech sales guy in you and in Dana rebels against the presentation style. The reality is, in those kind of events, if you're going to deliver all the information, you've only got 2,000 words, right? So you need the best way to. I've tried doing presentations, right? The kind of slideshow, PowerPointy kind of thing that you're taught to do as or at least I was taught to do as a tech sales guy 20 years ago. The challenge with that as a communication method is that you don't use the 2,000 words as well as you could have done.
I don't know, I'm not suggesting you shouldn't have read it out. I'm suggesting you should have performed reading it out.
Well, I should have read as if I was on stage and delivering a Shakespearean play.
Not quite that cakey, but just a little bit more like this happened to be 2,000 of words that you just thought of and you really believed in it, if you know what I mean. Rather than 2,000 words which you carefully crafted and really believed in, and now we're reading out. There's just a little bit. I felt a little bit.
Yeah,
you needed a bit more of an acting version.
Right. The way that the way that historians deliver material is exactly that dry way. But you can't deny the fact that rhetoric's a skill. You can't deny the fact that an improved method of communication, in this case, improved rhetoric, would have made my presentation style more effective than it was.
It was minor criticism. I'm not
No,
laying
no,
into
but
you or anything.
I
I didn't think
appreciate
it-
that because, and it actually ties up with exactly why I've been doing this pod rather than writing for the last year or 18 months, because the pod is all about this business of being able to communicate in the vernacular. Something we touched on. I'm just like looking at my stupid agenda there. Something that we touched on before was the fact that you could access the conference remotely, and I guess I wanted to make a wider point about conferences, academic conferences, and about how the whole character of them is undergoing a transformation. This is actually directly related to that rhetoric style. Is that pre-pandemic, if you wanted to go to the IMR, if you wanted to understand what was being talked about at the IMRRC, the only way to do it was to get on a plane and go. Right, the same way was for the same true of any conference. Right.
Mhm.
Once the conference is streamed, and once you can present it remotely, suddenly at that point, right, the physical conference sort of declines in importance, doesn't it? Almost, because the virtual conference, it becomes this thing where once upon a time there was a barrier to you participating at the IMRRC, because even if they accepted your paper, you weren't going to drop $3,000 on a trip there. I mean, some people did, but most. Whereas now, anybody, any student, most historians are paupers, aren't they? It gives it gives much more of a reach. So I think that's incredible and awesome, right? But you say, but the conference, it's all about the in-person and the networking. Yes, it is. So what an event like the IMRRC can be is both of those things. This year, because of family stuff, I couldn't go in person. Fine, I can't go in person. I still am participating and involved in the community by giving a paper, which not the same as going, right? Would still be worthwhile getting on the plane to go, to mingle with the people, to meet the new people, to be able to have in-depth conversations with people over dinner and over lunch. That's what you miss out on by by not going. But I just want to underscore how what's really happened with this virtual thing, and we're just at the beginning of the revolution, is that there is a place for the physical and the virtual, and the future is going to have both. And the exchange of information at these conferences is going to be so much better, because the dude that can't move from his basement, he can still do a presentation. And those of us that want to put on the sharp suit and have got the money to fly, we can do it, and we can mingle, and we'll see you at Pebble in a few weeks' time, kind of thing, right? There's room for everybody.
Yeah, agreed, and I absolutely applaud that. I mean, I think the challenge is always that it doesn't always work that way, in the sense that if you're battling against the tides of, well, post-pandemic people not answering their telephone, kids not answering their telephone. Only if you, why didn't you text me if you wanted to speak to me? But I rang you. Well, no one calls people anymore. That sort of thing. And also the fact that I went to a couple of conferences online during the pandemic, IT related, obviously, where they had breakout rooms and like you had virtual stands and people could come and see you. I mean, flat out, nobody did. Absolutely not at all. People went to the sessions they wanted to go to and then didn't turn up or participate in any way in any shape other than that at all.
Because the booth always was drop-in traffic. You always did only.
Yeah, that's why you put it between the snacks and the auditorium.
Yeah, whereas now they're at home. And the moment what they had to do is over, they're like, fuck that off, school run, TV, jerk off.
Yeah. Someone else. Exactly. Go and have a shit, whatever you need to do. You go and prioritize something else.
Vendor stands anymore.
And everyone loses because the vendors lose because they don't get to speak to those people in that passing traffic. And although they wouldn't like to admit it, they lose as well because what they also don't get then is a smattering in a Conan, I use the word deliberately, a smattering of, other languages, a smattering of, I was passing and I chatted to this geezer and he taught me about this, disk to disk remote backup. I spoke to this other chap. He talked to me about the fact that there were other plugins for my contact center that I can use for X, Y, and Z. Didn't even know that shit existed. You don't pick that up because you don't have to pass by the booths. You don't have to, oh yeah, I do want one of those squidgy throwaway toys they're giving away, so I'll give the guy 5 minutes. Well, damn, that was really interesting. I've got my IT director to meet him next week. That doesn't happen. So the people who sponsor the conferences lose, the vendors lose, and the attendees lose because a lot of that organic stuff's gone. So I completely agree with you. I like the fact that it is a broader church because it can include more stuff. And because it's enthusiast-based, one would hope, therefore, it has less of those mitigations. But just as a sort of, from the other side of the fence, looking at it from a sort of pure business interaction place, it can be, the end product can be diluted.
Yeah.
Which can be a bit of a shame. So I still think you haven't got a choice. You've got to include it. But it's finding a good way for those people to interact properly, which is difficult with a remote audience.
Yeah, I'm just brooding on the lessons that can be learned by contrasting a small, unprofessional enthusiast event with your kind of professional corporate, at the London Olympia kind of event. Because I read the other day that the Jeep Chrysler Ram are not doing any more motor shows. Now that's that is also because they're hurting for money at the moment, right? But also, of all the, it just, what that speaks to is that this is just not an environment. An auto show is just not an environment either to brand build or to sell cars anymore.
It's weird, isn't it? Because I was listening to a 44 Teeth episode a while back where they were doing their men read PDFs of all the stuff that was at EICMA. And they used to go to EICMA and they don't bother to go anymore because, and I mean, I wouldn't want to paraphrase and I wouldn't want to put words in their mouth, but I think that my takeaway from what their explanation was that essentially because every bugger and his wife has got a YouTube channel where they are registered to go and stand in front of the bikes with a camera or a webcam on a stick or whatever, and then do their own piece. It's very difficult to get, even in this sort of quote unquote downtime or when it's not being officially launched, to get time in front of and to produce any content that's meaningfully different from thousands of vloggers out there who are producing their own stuff. So they were like, we might as well bring you what we can do with better pictures talking over the top of it. And you don't get a picture of it.
That was exactly what we did with Just Go Drive. Yeah. That was the idea with the Just Go Drive reviews. But why would we spend ages shooting our own shitty footage when there's B-roll? Turns out every fucking halfwit on YouTube wants the shaky cam B-roll. I could have been JM.
Yeah.
You could have been JM if you just done it sooner. I couldn't have been a rip-off of Jeremy Clarkson. I'm me. I don't want to be a rip-off of Jeremy Clarkson. How come YouTube is full of people who just ripped off Jeremy Clarkson?
Yeah, I mean, it's...
maybe why I'm so cynical about Clarkson. I thought of this just recently. I was talking with somebody about Clarkson just recently. It's because Beavis and Butthead Wilman and Clarkson, Gammy and Summers, right? Wilman and Clarkson went to Repton together and liked cars. They were mates who went to school together, who liked cars, who later in life washed up at the BBC together and were like, oh. And imagine if we had some budget, if we in our 30s, if you and me had some budget and had the, Repton connections rather than the Devonport High School for Boys connections, we could have done we could have created that kind of content. I'm not saying, oh, I could have been Jamie Clarkson. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that, on the contrary, I'm ready for a new kind of automotive journalist. I don't want somebody who's a rip-off of Clarkson. What are these guys in America doing trying to rip off Top Gear and Clarkson? Like, just
I completely agree. And I mean, like, I love the guys from 44 Teeth, and I love them because they're authentically who they are. However, a lot of the stuff they do on BBB is a little bit too, like, lagers and lads and louts and stuff for me. I mean, and I understand that sells and it's hugely popular, and I think it's a genius move of them to then put an unedited, like, X-rated cut out at loads of cinemas up and down the UK, rent those cinemas out for a night, and go straight to the audience like that. That's a very clever plan, and it certainly proved hugely successful for them last time. But it does get a little bit close to a lot of the reasons why I thought, oh, for good God, like, this is on the BBC. This is fucking embarrassing. The sort of casual. Now, they don't do really the casual xenophobia in the same way as that Clarkson would do.
Yeah, because it's 2023, not 2003.
Correct. But nonetheless, it is a little bit sort of trending and sort of that way. And I find those a little bit hard to watch. I think the interesting stuff where they're talking about bikes and their genuine enthusiasm for bikes is hugely plays through, which is most of their stuff.
I know what I was going to say. Baron von Grumble, the early stuff that Chris, can't remember his second name, did, where he was riding up to London, and that stuff, right? I don't want to, I know what happened in his personal life, right? When I first watched those Baron von Grumble stuff, I loved it, right? Because it was like the monologue in my own head, right? And the key one, and the one with the most views, is the one where, as he's coming up onto the M4, he's on his Gixxer, he's been weaving in and out of traffic, it's rain, you're stressed, somebody's just tried to knock him off in a Mercedes sedan, and as he's merging, there's a bloke riding with one of those shirts that says, instead of police, it looks like it says police, but it says polite. And he has this rampage, like just rant at the polite, right? At the just. Now, in that moment, right, then it's comedy genius and you're rolling around laughing, right? Then you realize what's happened to him with his personal life and his mental health and all of that. And then watching it back, you're like, wow, this is documentary of a mental breakdown here. This right turn on red in California, they're talking about banning it.
Like, I always thought that the right turn on red was the one thing we could pretty much import from America when we left turn on red over here. But, like,
Danny, I have said to Americans for decades now, America has only made two contributions to civilization, really: the s'more and the right turn on red. And now we're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and we're going to, why? So that people can carry on looking at their phones and step into the road and it not be their responsibility. That's really what it is. That's really at the root of this, right? What we're saying, we're shifting the responsibility for the safety of pedestrians from pedestrians to car users. Now, I'm fine as a car user to be responsible for not running over the pedestrian, but I can't be responsible if that pedestrian is looking at their phone and stepping into the road. And what you're realistically asking people to do is, in a four-way, what's already a four-way intersection, you're now making it not just four-way, you're making it eight-way, because I need to look not just for the cars, but I also need to look for people walking and even for cyclists as well. You're making the job very, very hard for the motorist, and yet the motorist is the one with this dangerous piece of equipment. there should be some responsibility on the pedestrian. I know not for all pedestrians. I get that there's children and old people and so on. I get that. But at some point, the pedestrian has to take responsibility for not stepping out in front of the car. Am I a halfway? Cale Yarborough's gone.
Yeah, I did have a quick scan about the gentleman. Yeah.
I have a couple of stories about him. I do feel like, I guess the headline for me is that, I know in the modern era there's been Jimmy Johnson and all of that, but for I think for the classical period there is King Richard Petty, there's David Pearson, there's Bobby Allison, and there's Cale Yarborough. And you can throw Dale into that mix as well, can't you? But to me, he comes from an era that I remember rather than the era before that. But I feel from those formative years of NASCAR, there was, King Richard, Pearson, Cale, and Bobby. And now only Bobby and King Richard are left. And that's that's a thing. So that was my first thought on it. My second thought is that of course, the truly immortal moment for Cale Yarborough will be that, 1976 or 1979 Daytona 500, the one that they televised. Have you seen the end of that race? Do you know what I'm talking about? Oh, marvelous. Well, it was the Daytona 500, and it was the first time it was going to be televised. And across the Northeast, there was terrible weather, and everybody had nothing to do but be inside watching TV. So the viewing figures were massive. The race was an okay race, but then right towards the end, have you heard of Bobby's brother, Donnie Allison? Donnie had a less successful career, but was generally considered more wild. Okay. So Bobby and Cale are like on the home stretch, right? On the back stretch, like half a lap to go. And on that back stretch, it's worth watching. They just go at each other like it was the Dukes of Hazzard. They are just, but at NASCAR speeds, right? It's and it ends in the infield. And then Bobby stops, and then there's a fight. And really, it was everything that NASCAR could have ever wanted and dreamed, and it made NASCAR. It launched. That was the moment that launched NASCAR. That's the pivotal moment when NASCAR stopped being a southern regional sport and started being the behemoth that it grew into in the 20th century. Really a key thing. And I guess something that I think about, because as always with the cars, it's not just the racing. It's how the story gets told that's the important thing. And I guess so Cale a part of that. The other story that I think of, and it made me laugh recently when I was karting with my son, was Junior Johnson, who hired Cale because he thought Cale was the same kind of driver as he was, who was just a guy who, held the pedal to the metal, basically. There was not too much, there was no holding back. He was a charger, a go, don't know where I read this. So I would struggle to find a source, but it's the car is in the pits, and Junior leans over the car to offer Cale advice, and the advice is go to the front. And when I got in the go-kart the other day, I Ollie Ollie was like in the sort of pit lane bit with me. And as I got in and put my helmet on, he patted me on the head and went, "Go to the front," and then got behind the pit wall. It's editor John, and of course, typically I fail to mention the most important things about my 3 things I remembered about Cale. I forgot to mention the most important things. I think the most important thing has to be the 3 back-to-back championships, which in modern motorsport, just I think because of the way the engineering is, it's not unusual for a driver or a team end driver to be dominant for a long period. But in the 70s, there was no branch of motorsport where anybody was dominant for an extended period. So Cale's 3 championships back to back, they really warrant further study. And really within those 3 championships back to back, you have the greatness of Cale Yarborough. And I've never really looked closely at that. And it probably warrants it, to be honest. The other, of course, great memory of Cale Yarborough, which I forgot to make any reference to, was the tangle with Sam McQuagg, which if you've not seen, I'm not going to spoil it. I'll just leave you with an encouragement to find the link in the description of the pod here. The line I always liked was when Cale was interviewed after the incident. He said, "I felt like an astronaut. When I looked down and I saw grass, I knew I wasn't in the racetrack anymore." Really an awesome thing. So Cale, right? The retirement story, I like this as well. He's got 4 daughters. I'll probably tell you this before, but for the benefit of the podcast, he's home one day. His daughters are just sitting around, and he says, "Why aren't you riding those bikes or something like that?" And they're like, "Oh, the bikes are broken." And he's like, "Well, why don't you come and tell me that the bikes were broken? How to fix them?" And they're like, "Well, because you're never here." And that was the moment where he was like, I'm going to retire. I'm going to be here. Which I think is I mean, it's that story which is so good that you just want it to be true, even if it isn't. And again, I don't remember where I heard or read that story. I may have even heard it from there's a video on YouTube. I'll put a link for it, where it's like a NASCAR reunion. It was filmed in 1998, and it's really funny. And it's when the legends have retired, but they're still compos mentis, and they get on each other. They talk about cheating. It's
I did watch a bit of that, the Dale Earnhardt podcast.
Oh, the Dale Jr. podcast.
Yeah, Junior
is different, and Dale Jr. has done a thing about cheating, and the Dale Jr. thing's contemporary. This is from 20 years ago, so this has got Cuckoo Marlin still being alive. This has got Dick Brooks in it still being alive. So it's and it's got Darrell Waltrip before the TV career. Very unfiltered. Like 44 Teeth version of Darrell Waltrip.
Yeah. X-rated.
Which is kind of cool. It's not X. It just So the broken bicycle and the retirement. And my final Cale story is the winning of the 19. So after this, he only does big events, right? But he's ready to do the Daytona 500 because obviously it's big payday. He and Pearson would do it, right? The practice week, the car. He qualifies well, pole, I think. If I bins the car though, car toileted totally, right? They don't have a car. The team do not have a car for the race. They're casting around. The sponsor is Hooters. Maybe a local Hooters restaurant might have a demonstration car. They do. They drive 2 hours to Tennessee or wherever, pick up the car, tow it back, and turn the car that was sitting outside a Hooters restaurant into the race car, which Cale then goes out and wins with? Hooters
That
being
is-
the restaurant where the chicks all wear tight tops.
I know it for that very reason.
Have you been to one?
No.
I went to one with Mark Newton once. Very odd experience. Very odd.
Oh, I bet.
It's like you're there because everybody knows you're like there for the tits. The food is like McDonald's food for much higher prices. So that's really that was a very odd experience.
Yeah, no, that is a bit weird.
Although everyone knows you're there for the tits, you've got to like act like you're not there for the tits. It's very
which is difficult when the food's shit. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. If
the
the food was good, or if it was a pub, you could exist in a happy realm that you weren't just here for the tits, you were here for the beer. But
yeah, you could have what they call in physics a superposition, where you're in, like in quantum mechanics, where you're in two states at once. Yeah, so it's not right. The question is understandable to ask in what orbit is the electron, but it is a silly question in the sense because it's in both orbits. It's just there a different percentage of the time when you actually stop and look. So it's like, how often are you perving? How often are you nomming your burger?
Hopefully not nomming. Hopefully not nomming your taco.
Exactly. Nomming your taco. That is my quantum mechanics theory of Hooters. Also, what was that story you were telling? Oh yeah, that reminds me of the story that they tell on which, if you haven't watched the episode, is one of the best 44 Teeth episodes for me. I like the one where they are in James's garage and it's just chatting to James, talking about the world, life, the universe, and everything. And it's about a 25-30 minute episode, and he talks about how he fucked his leg up and had the accident. And I won't tell the story because he should tell the story, and he does it much better than I ever could. And it's a genuinely compelling piece.
James being the Bristolian mechanic that's like the Jigsaw Whisperer.
The Bristolian guy who owns JLS Racing, or he's co-owns, but he's the main guy at JLS Racing in Bristol. Yeah, but the other one that they tell is where it's Fagan and the other northern guy that does bike, the elderly chap who does what's his name? It'll come back to me. Who does like some of their foreign trips on dirt bikes and stuff.
Tell me afterwards and I can dub it in.
Cool. I'll leave a space here.
I've been doing that. I've been like interrupting myself. Whenever I've been factually incorrect, I've just interrupted myself and been like,
Mossy.
You can do better than that.
I think it's Mossy. Yeah. But they're telling that stories about their worst crashes and injuries that they've had. And Mossy tells a story about when they had, I think it was a Jigsaw Thou or one of the big superbike launches back in the day. And they'd had it for a while and they'd done their stuff. And basically they needed to, they were doing wheelie shots. And they were like, they checked down the street. And anyway, long story short, he fucked up and made a mistake and over wheelied it and basically dropped it on himself. So like over wheelied, but like the photographer got, and he said, if you've ever seen a shot of a Jigsaw Thou, like with the rear number plate rubbing the floor, like and an overdone wheelie, that's me, because the photographer got the shot. But then like the bike fell on him and obviously like cartwheeled down the street, smashed to bits. So he had the knocked out of him. And like there's only one of them. So they've got the bike, the UK press bike, and it's now not fit for purpose. At least cosmetically. So he and the guy that they were out on the shoot with went to the pub to debrief. What the fuck are we going to do? Kind of conversation. And then one of them had the genius idea to call the head of, I think it was the Crescent Suzuki or someone in like that. So it was one of the motorsport teams that were running the bikes. And he said, like, I've had this. And he went, oh, come down. You can nick any bits you want. I got 4 of them in the garage.
Oh,
like you God, boy, do I owe you some beers. And it gets fixed. But that whole episode is like a 30 or 40 minute episode where they're talking about the different injuries. Worst injury I had was when I fucked my knee up at Donington. You know, the tarmacs there at Thruxton. He always, whenever you hear Fagan talk about racing at Thruxton, he always talks about how like the track's super abrasive. It's like you crash, it's like being on sandpaper, straight through your leathers. And like that's where he left like a bit of his kneecap somewhere on church. It's out there somewhere if you can find it. It's that sort of injury. But the stories are really well told and really compelling by 2 guys just chatting to each other. And Mossy's story about bidding the superbike, the over wheelie, had the same sort of like, he said you almost wouldn't believe it, but there is that shot of me overwheeling it. He said that's about half a second before it lands on me.
And I just want to drive my car. I don't know where I'm going, but at least I ain't standing still.
Oh, it has been approved, by the way. The Spot ETF. ETH's over 2,500 now.
Dude. It's that Monster Magnet song, isn't it? I want to get paid for being right.
I want to start a fire and fly a jet, save a dog, get paid for being right. Yeah.
Look, we are so smart, so how come we ain't rich? So we need to get fucking money now.
Yes, it's the milk, it's in the fridge. It's turning into cheese. If I'm so smart, how come I ain't rich? No one knows, no one sees.
By the way, on back onto cars very briefly. So I will say this for the pod. I'll give you an update now on the BMW. More things have gone wrong with it. I've had enough of it.
Oh, I knew it was going. I listened back to episode 14, and I could tell.
I've got to get rid of it. It's just too many things now. The latest one is it went in for a service because it needed a service, but it went in for the MOT first, and it got the wash wipe motor had died, and the warranty that they sold me at the dealership, which also overlapped with the BMW warranty one, which is a bit sus, it seems to me, because when I called up BMW and said I need to renew your warranty, they went, "Oh, you can't because the other one's running." I suddenly thought, I put it on the phone and went, "Oh, okay, that's nice of them to tell that, be honest." And then I thought, hold on a second. Well, in which case the dealer sold me concurrent warranties from the start. So someone's fucked up here. But the latest issue is none of those. The latest issue is someone has taken the cover off the amplifier for some reason, and then glued it back. So in the rain recently, water has got into the amplifier and wrecked it. So I wouldn't have known that, except for the fact that I was driving along one day and about 120 decibels worth of scream started coming from the speakers. For about 20 seconds, and then it would stop for about 20 seconds, and then just carry on. And there's nothing you can do about it. If you stop the car off and turn it off and on, sometimes if you got out of the car, that would stop. But so I got them to investigate that on the service, and they called up the warranty and said this is like 1,500 quid. It's screwed, and they went, "Oh, we don't cover stereo equipment," so that's not covered. So now I'm in a position where, and there's there's so many other things. I mean, I've been making a list of all the things I'm going to write to BMW about, because I'm going to write to them. I'm going to put it back in their court, and hopefully BMW, being the stand-up company they are, they will say, "Look, we done you wrong. You've been screwed over by this dealer. We'll put this right." And I hope they do. And if they do, I will say on this podcast what a stand-up, lovely job they did and what great people are, and that everyone can get stitched up. These things happen. It's bad luck. But it's about, I'm making a list. And so far, the list is of different things that have gone wrong. The warranty, the reversing beep, the amp screaming, the wheels repainting, the aircon, the cigarette light not functioning in the front, my vibrating brakes, the maps that I paid for won't download into the car, the wash wipe pump has failed, failing the MOT, pushing it off the road for 6 months, and the stop-start is disabled and can't be turned back on, whether or not I want to, but will turn itself back on randomly and scare the shit out of you here and there and just stop-start in the middle of town, and you're thinking, has the car just died? And then when you put your foot back on, you take your foot off the clutch, you'll put your foot back on the clutch kind of thing, it will then start back up again. But you can't turn it off or on.
How many miles is it wearing?
40 something, 42.
And it's a
2017. It's not old.
I mean, did you ever have it before? Like use it for track work? Or
I don't
something?
know. Did they bang a race it? I mean, I just don't know what
Yeah.
I lost. So I mean, look, I don't think this is a representative. It says I go onto the BMW page today to find the warrant, the email to complain to, and I thought this is good. And then I thought, I better make sure I've not forgotten stuff. And all the way through the afternoon, again, oh yeah, mustn't forget that. Oh yeah, there was that as well. So I can't. I try and be a decent bloke. I can't sell this car on in this state. I'm going to have to get this stuff fixed one way or the other, because it's not right. I can't just be that asshole.
Well, or just be honest with a dealer, because
one way or the other. But I can't take a bath on this. When I bought this used approved from BMW, and I bought the warranty that they told me to, and it's been off the only reason it's been off the road. and I ran out of BMW warranties because my wife got cancer and I couldn't get this stuff fixed because I needed to be out and about and I didn't have time to have the car away. I couldn't be away and have the car away at the dealer because I had no one to drop me down and pick it up. And the nearest dealer in Hungerford don't give you loan cars. So you have to go over there and either get a train back and then a cab or walk 5 miles back from the station to here, which I have done on one occasion. Or, so, you know what I mean? It was just an absolute nightmare, you know, with Angie with the hip operations and the cancer and all. I just didn't have time. I just have to run the ever reliable Fiesta and thank the heavens for Ford, loving the blue oval as ever, and think, I can't believe this Stuttgart shit. Like, what is going on? Munich, sorry. So yeah, look, I'm sure they'll put it right, and I'm going to write to them and put it right, and I will update on what they have to say. But it's got to go because, you know, it's like I can't have that sort of thing. Like my niece is a tremulous lass. She's been in the car, it's screaming like no, like the car's got a monster in it. You know, it's like I can't. And I was driving it home when I literally had to stop several times to get out and just my ears stopped ringing. And when I drove it over there the other day to get the service done, I put earplugs in. The sort of like waxy ones that you can shove right into your ears to really block, and it was still agony to drive it over there. So I don't trust it anymore. So look, hopefully they'll put it right, and then, you know, I may buy another BMW, but at the moment my thinking around what I will likely buy is from Toyota, which is not something I would have thought I would have said, and is a Yaris, which is very much not the Yaris my mum's just bought. But I like the idea of a Yaris GR with the track pack.
Yeah.
Those things are beasts. So yeah, I'm going to trial it. But yeah, anyway, so we'll see. Because I mean, look, if BMW come back and sort me out and do right by me, I would not be averse to
I would wait and see what happens with BMW.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I would go into a Toyota dealership and just trade it. Because the reality is, right, I watch these, you know, that Chops Garage guy, or I watch this guy, Car UK, this bloke Lee up in Crewe. You know, they have a business where they buy cars cheap, figure out what they need, do that work, and sell the car. And they sell the car for market value. So you might buy a Nissan Qashqai for £700 at the auction, but you might have to put £1,300 into it, doing work that you or I would consider unnecessary, respraying a bumper, you know, refitting around, you know, doing the rust around because the person who's buying a sub $5,000 car in North Devon, where Chops does it, that person, it's a new car.
No, true. Yeah, it's fair comment.
So they need it to look nice. It's their only car.
Yeah.
They need it to look nice.
Yeah.
They need to have a new car feeling. So, and so there's and the point about, so you would say, well, these guys are just, I used to feel like dealers just tart the car up. But what Lee and Chops, James, do is not that at all. Yeah, they do the aesthetic stuff because that's what customers need. But they'll also do, you know, they'll also rust proof the shit out of it, to quote Lee. You know, because what you want is the customer to leave and tell his friends.
Yeah.
You run a business in the town.
Oh, hell yeah.
And you want them to come back.
Yeah, verbal recommendations. That is they are king. Yeah.
And that's and so the other thing is consumer law in Britain is very different from here. Here, they can sell you a vehicle as is. You know, which means that, you know, when you drive off the lot, if the engine falls out at the end of the block, it's on you. Whereas in Britain, you have 6 months like consumer protection. You know, in the first 30 days, you can return the car, no questions asked, to a dealer. You know, the level of consumer. So what that means is so for guys like, you know, what Lee and James both do is sub $5,000 economy cars, right? And the reason that they won't touch stuff like BMWs or Jaguars is that they have no idea that thing could launch an expensive component at any time, right? And they just can't be on the hook for that because it would just suck all the margin out of that car. Because by the time you've put 13 grand into that, you've put, you paid 700 for the cash car, you put $1,300 in bodywork, servicing, you maybe put brakes on it, you probably put tires on it because it had some mismatched, terrible ones on it. You just made it not just look like a decent car, actually be a decent car, right? At that point, it's going out the door for 2.5 grand or something like that, which feels like a rip-off. You only paid 700 for it, and that's what you and I are thinking. Jesus, what's he really done to it? I could have changed the oil and changed the spark plugs myself, and I didn't need the bodywork. But the point is, their customers demand the complete package. You or I could go to one of the auctions they go to and pay $700 and roll the dice, right? I'd be ready to do that if I was not. If when I came to England, I wasn't buying a car that I needed to just work ski and not break down.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
but dude, so we'll see. I mean, it's. I mean, I forgot you were talking about the Southwest, but yeah, there's definitely a market down there for that, and absolutely, that's a reasonable amount of money to invest in a car. And if you're getting a car that only costs 10 to 15 to start with, it's not that old a car. It's so you want it to be decent theoretically. A sub $5 grand could be quite a reasonably newish car, not depending on the price of the car. So
yeah, absolutely. And what what people look for, isn't it? Is they just want something that can run them around a little bit.
Yeah, but they want to impress the neighbours with their nice shiny wheels.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why the attitude that you and I take, where I just am astonished that the Lee particularly, it's just been an eye opener for me how. Just the more bodywork stuff, the more work you have to put into it, so the more it hurts the car. So years ago when that Volvo did a timing chain, nobody wanted it because nobody wanted to do an engine swap on it because the bodywork was not good. And I was like, what do you mean what's the bodywork got to do with it? Like, either you're going to do the engine or you're not. Like, why is the bodywork got anything to do with it? Well, the bodywork's got everything to do with it because the bodywork is where the value of the car lies for most people most of the time. Which brings me on to that E55, right? Because that is the classic example of something that can be driven. I put 1,500 miles on it through Pebble time. It wore those miles brilliantly, but it just needs so much money spending on it cosmetically. Like, off the top of my head, tires, which obviously it needs all four. They're bloody expensive. Rust around the sunroof, big hole, many cracks in windshield. I mean, just that, right, is probably more than $1,000, right? Definitely more than $1,000. Yeah. Anyway, enough of this depressing stuff about German cars that don't work.
No.
Henry Seagrave, Sir Henry Seagrave, the first man to do 200 miles an hour, the first vehicle to do 200 miles an hour, the Irving Napier Sunbeam, also known as the 1,000 horsepower Sunbeam. The National Motor Museum are doing this big thing at the moment to make it run again. The last time it ran, it has two 22.5 litre V12 Sunbeam aero engines. The last time it ran, they only got one working. It potted round Brooklands or Silverstone or something. Bit lame-o. Plan to raise a bit more money, plan to bring it out to Daytona and run it on the beach at Daytona with both engines.
Cool.
Yes.
I approve.
Awesome.
Yeah, I thoroughly agree with that. And speaking of which, that is pretty cool.
They're fundraising.
Oh, are they?
I'm going to mute you there, and they're fundraising at the moment, and I'm going to add the link. Go to the National Motor Museum website, contribute, be involved. I am super enthusiastic.
Definitely. I was only looking for the members meeting this year at Goodwood is celebrating Can-Am.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm quite looking forward to that.
Wow. Yeah. All Chevy big blocks, right? So it's a bit like Formula One in the period where there's one motor and then you sort of build around that one motor, and it's who can build the best mousetrap. Mm-hmm. And the McLarens really were it until the Porsche 917. And you understand them, the mutant Porsche 917 that was first the 91710, then the 91730. 91730 is the 1300 horsepower lap Talladega at 244 mile an hour ended the Can-Am series. Jobby,
Sorry,
right?
you're
Like,
too fast.
it's like Porsche didn't just build tanks in the Second World War. They demolished a whole motor racing series. Yeah, the interest in Can-Am for me, the interest in Can-Am generally is just that mixed field, right? Because it was Shadow, as it was McLaren, it was Shadow, it was Surtees, it was Stewart, it was, really a cool period of motorsport. I'm just going to go and check on the Hound. Hang on a sec.
Yeah, cool. I'll check on the missus. She's gone to bed, I think.
Electric news. I'm kind of obsessed by electric bikes. We've sort of touched on this before. I'm obsessed by the crossover between a mountain bike, a street bike, a motorcycle, a moped. I feel like a scooter. All of the definitions are being blurred. We talked about that Honda Motor Campo thing before, but that's sort of not what I'm talking about here. And I'm not talking about these sort of scooters, these like when I say I'm not talking about. There's a difference between scooters, which are great for like mobility, like sub 15 miles an hour, like between the tube and your office kind of thing, the underground in your office, the metro in your office, or if you live in a apartment building and you're just going to go down to the ground floor and just pop out to a restaurant and grab some food and come back again, the scooter is the perfect solution for that, on the sidewalk, off the sidewalk, that kind of thing. But right there is what I want to talk about, is this legal gray area, right? And I want to say that there's kind of two. And I feel like the machines are, the reality is, if you buy a decent mountain bike at the moment, a decent electric mountain bike, that is more capable than a dirt bike and can be ridden like a dirt bike. And I had this thought, and then I was at the school pickup. I was at the school drop-off, and I'm at the line, sitting there in the Mustang, looking down the hill, watching the traffic come up the hill. And the traffic stopped, and then splitting lanes, coming to the front lane, is a guy on an electric mountain bike. He's wearing a dirt bike helmet and dirt bike armor, and he's sitting at the lights. He split lanes, and away from the lights, he picks up the front wheel and whips up past me. He's not upsetting anybody. It took place absolutely silently. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Now, we were walking the other day out, my wife and I, and there's some dude like on an electric mountain bike who's like riding. He's not pedaling at all. He's just riding around at motorcycle speeds, but on and off the sidewalk, and around the park, and this without any kind of armor or head protection whatsoever. So I feel like the technology is very, very exciting. It's very, very Wild West. And we are entering a new era of head trauma and run-down pedestrians, the like of which we've not seen since the boom in motorcycles in the early teens, and then in the 20s, and then in the post-war period. I feel it's because these things are motorcycles, that they perform like motorcycles, and they need to be ridden like motorcycles, yet they look like bikes and can be bought like bikes, and psychologically people think of them as pedal bikes, and they are a different class of vehicle.
Electric scooters are particularly, incite vitriol and anger in a way that other modes of transport don't.
The thing with the scooters was the scooters were so badly introduced was that the scooters never should have been allowed to just litter the streets in the way that they were. That was outrageous. And in cities where much of the population is hurting for income, to see these hundreds of dollars worth of scooters scattered on the streets, and for it to be like just VC money that was pissed up the wall, that was offensive. Like, that was offensive to me. I don't know if other people thought maybe that was a very sort of valley kind of perspective, but it seemed to me it illustrated the grotesque Silicon Valley waste that they were ready to like have these scooters and just watch them be destroyed on the streets on the off chance that there might be some kind of a different urban mobility model here. That was Bird went bust. They were valued at $2.5 billion 18 months ago or something ridiculous. The scooter people, they were the ones that I was. It was Revel that I was with. They pulled out of this market. It's a shame. Communal scooters, communal mopeds, brilliant idea, but nobody can seem to get the business model right, or at least they haven't yet.
No, it's interesting because attitudes change with age and stuff as well. So that the younger folks seem to be happier with it. So therefore, I mean, I have no problem with it. I like the idea of like the electric scooters zipping around to do stuff, and it does sort of take volume off the road. It takes weight off the road. It takes energy out of the cycle because it takes less energy to move you from one place to another. It's more convenient. So I can see lots of upsides to it. But you're absolutely right. Most people treat there'll be plenty of people who get back on a scooter electric scooter whose last scooter was the little two-wheel push-along variety they rode along the pavement when they were like 7, and sort of have in their head that they're a sort of more convenient version of the same thing. And those people will still be thinking that in A&E.
Ollie and I followed a guy on a scooter who was on the sidewalk and off the sidewalk, and he jumped off the sidewalk like without looking at the motorcycle test in England, the lifesaver, no lifesaver. He just like jumped off, and it's on me that he doesn't throw himself under the wheels of my Mustang. Like, what's going on? He obviously had no helmet or anything. It's really
exactly. I mean, there are still people who complain or don't ride push bikes with a lid, and I mean, I sort of understand. I have a sort of inherent sympathy with being allowed to do what you want in most circumstances, but you are a dickhead if you don't think you're going to hurt yourself more badly if you fall off without a lid on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big deal in the States, isn't it? That some states are non-helmet laws and others are helmet states, and my position has shifted on it in that I do think it's personal choice, but I'd be very angry with Ollie if he ever rode without one. Am I all right with him riding up and down the street on his pedal bike without a helmet? Not really, but I'm not going to be like, Ollie, put your helmet on. I'm like, if I get out and I get down the hill, if I get out and I start riding my pedal bike and I realize the wind's in my hair and I've forgotten my helmet, which I sometimes do still, I'm not going to turn around and go back and get it. But having said that, I can't remember the last time I rode any kind of bike without a helmet. And
it's falling off the bike of any. Once you've fallen off a motorbike, you realize how much it hurts and how much there's not much give in the time.
And how much it just spoils all the fucking fun. If you can fall off and not be hurt, that's not like a sissy. That's you can get on and carry on with the game.
You get back on and go again. Yeah, exactly. Like let's not fucking spoil the game, and also spoil the game for the other road users. Like, you know, you might be comfortable riding your Harley like an asshole with no helmet on, with your denim jacket protection, like, but when you hit the front of my F-150, you're dead, and now I've got to live with that. Whereas if you'd had a lid on and a back protector, you might have been all right.
Yeah. Well, that's how I felt about this.
All right.
That's how I felt about this numpty high schooler jumping off the curb in front of me in the Mustang.
Yeah. So I don't want to have to live with your death because you're a dickhead.
Yeah. 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 Well,
So
it's still up on the roads is
it's-
the answer, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Did you watch about this Johnny Smith talking about the late break show, talking about this Volvo EX30 electric car?
Yeah, I can't remember. It was a while back. What was
He was like, it's a mile.
Something-
He was like, he feels it's a milestone car. He feels that in terms of size, shape, and price, it's a milestone car. I couldn't get past the first 5 minutes of the video because I'm just like, it's just boring. I'm not knocking the Volvo. It might be a great. I didn't see anything in there. I guess what really put me off was it has a Quartic wheel, which is I know, like Allegro, right? The steering wheel needs to spin in your hands. It's like fundamental.
Yeah. I did what I'm looking at it now. I did watch some of it. I think, to be fair,
remember
I
the
skipped
Mr. Men
some of it.
in Mr. Do you remember the Mr. Men? There's one where it's Nonsense Land and it's the Nonsense Cup, and the character, I can't remember Mr. what his name is, but he's desperately trying to think of something to win the competition, and he thinks back to other competitions, and one of the other competitions was a car that had square wheels. That was one of the other winners of the most ridiculous thing of the year, like the Ridiculous Cup. Right, it's really, and you're going to tell me the steering wheel is going to be square. So, did you have an opinion about the EX30 or not?
I found the whole thing somewhat dull. I find his reporting style slightly too dry for me. It's a little bit like not engaging. It feels like he's like reading out someone else's opinions on occasion. But I mean, look, it didn't excite me. I don't like SUVs.
Well, I think they're his own opinions that he's made notes on. I think that's his way of doing the third wheel.
Well, look, fair enough. I mean, I like, fair play to him, but like, it's I don't find them the most engaging videos from the late break show. And I didn't find, it's one of those ones where, generally speaking, electric cars need to offer for me something special to differentiate, to see why I would want it, because that's what I want from all cars. And that doesn't offer anything. That is like a vanilla piece of bland sponge cake, and they're trying to be that, and they're trying to be efficient and slightly edgy with the design. The design doesn't particularly excite me, and it from the side on, it's slab white, might as well be a kitchen appliance,
Yeah, but
So I'm
all
not
of
really
these
into that.
modern SUVs are like that, aren't they?
Yeah, I know, but that's why I don't want an SUV. Why do I want more car than I need? I feel bad. Part of the reason I would buy small cars is because, like, even though I'm buying a performance version, I might admit, is because at least I'm moving less metal around the place. So, the idea of some of the electric cars where they're trying to be small and super light and use that power to weight to give you an exciting drive. Okay, cool. I can see that. If it's going to be a big chunky car, where's my 700-mile range? Because you've got shit tons of batteries. That hasn't got that. So where's my special thing?
Yeah.
I'm looking for something to deliver me a bit of additional value out of it, and it isn't there.
Well, that episode 1.
And also, like, what the shit? I don't need that sort of ugly piece of crap family car to do 5 seconds to 60. What is the point in that? I don't understand why all these people want thousands of horsepower and they want their big, ugly sedan to do 0 to 60 in like 3 seconds. What is the point in that? You're putting ridiculous performance, supercar performance, into the hands of people who have no idea how to use it and will kill themselves off the line. That's why there's so many accidents in that way, because these people have drag strip performance. And the fastest thing they've ever owned before is like,
Have you not found that the traffic light Grand Prix against the Teslarati is they zip away from you, being like, "I'll beat you in your Mustang," whilst you're like grinding up through the gears, right? And then they're like run out of steam at a speed which, I find there's a certain speed in California that I am ready to go far beyond, that most people are like, "Oh, whoops, that's too fast for me."
Well, I mean, I can understand both sides of that argument.
And I would say, it's Jixers, right? Jixers just spoil you.
Motorbikes spoil you for any of that sort of stuff. I mean, like, but there's a time and place for all of that. And my point is that the traffic light Grand Prix, when you can pull away at what was hitherto £100,000 car to get you into that class, for most people, it's a cheap thrill. Yeah, it's like, oh, have you seen my 06? Great. But like, have you done anything else in another performance car? Because now you're approaching that next bend that you usually toot around at enthusiast speeds. And if you aren't an enthusiast and used to placing your car properly, that Tesla is not going to save you.
Yeah, no, and you're also crashing something that's very heavy, aren't you? So yeah, I'd actually not thought about this angle before of putting performance into into the hands of people.
I like the idea of it. I like the idea of emancipating that, and why not have like that sort of like top trump figure for your sedan? Cool, but they're already talking about. I read an article the other day about how they're thinking about that tarmac might not be the future, and they might need to go back to concrete roads because the electric vehicles will be too heavy, and therefore in the hotter summers they'll just sink into the tarmac, and therefore we need to go back to having expansion joint concrete because it can actually take the weight better, and therefore that we might have to, when the roads are replaced, go back to a harder road material because, which is perhaps, I think, less grippy as well. So you might have to go back to that because the vehicles are just so heavy with the battery packs in them. Now, look, maybe the battery technology gets ahead. Processing certainly has kept ahead in those sort of Moore's law kind of ways. So it hasn't been there yet, but I'm hopeful. Yeah, let's see.
So on the subject of heavy electric cars that kind of do it, or not, maybe not your 700-mile range, but the 500-mile range, Lucid. I drove one. What even inspired me to start doing this? That must have been a year, 18 months ago, maybe even longer than that now. But the point is that I'm making that they are short of money at the moment. They are arguably.
Well, they're selling something to super rich people.
Well, I think what they stand or fall on now is whether they were backed by Saudi money, and it's whether they want to carry on putting their hands in their pockets or not to continue, them developing. The product I experienced really did feel like a next generation Mercedes S-Class. Whether what's being put in the hands of consumers was the same as the particular model that I drove, because it seems to me that they do different editions, and it seems to me that these electric makers, even better than the legacy makers, are really good at like decontenting. Like the Breeze new Tesla is a nice place to be. The basey ones, they're like a McDonald's, but yet the overall look is the same. And to a casual observer, there's not that much difference.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because a really nice S-Class place to be, cool. But how many Mercedes S-Classes are they selling? And is the S-Class on its own making money, or is it being supported by the E and the C and the M's and all the AMG? How much is it?
Well, I think I would be surprised if the S didn't make money.
You know what I mean, though. But the others haven't got that.
Part of the reason why you buy a Mercedes S-Class is because it's a Mercedes S-Class,
and you're getting the S because of all the other people who've got the A and the E's and the C's and and the A's.
But not even that. Wherever you go in the world, the 3-pointed star has a unique.
Yeah.
There's just no.
It has badge swag, doesn't it? It has badge swag.
Well, it has badge swag, but more than that, the Mercedes S-Class is like the place to be chauffeured, isn't it? It's the car of diplomats and kings and presidents. It has that kind of
for sure.
So however great I felt the Lucid product was, it just shows how hard it is to find traction. Maybe we should be crediting the Muskinator for actually being able to create a commercially successful product.
I mean, for sure. I think he absolutely does deserve like some credit for that. Where I can't verbally give him that credit without offering, on the other hand, the fact that he's product developing on the road with people's lives as crash test dummies. And I feel that's a bit, well, of an asshole move.
I'd agree.
So yeah, but yeah, you know, yin yang.
Pivoting. A couple of thoughts I've had recently, just apropos nothing, just in the weeks since we last spoke. The Jaguar Mark II, indeed the Jaguar Mark I, the Jaguar sedan that everybody knows, came with a 2.4 litre straight six, 3.4 litre straight six, 3.8 litre straight six, right? So the same block as the Le Mans winners, but with different carburation and heads and compression and all of that. In its sort of peak form, so in like the 3.8, manual transmission form, properly tuned, that was like a 220 horse car. Obviously, that would endow it with, even with the 4-speed overdrive transmission at the time, that would endow it with 120, 125 mile an hour top speed, right? Now I need you to compare that with anything else that you could get in Britain at that time. Other fast cars at the time, the Capri 3 litre, 130 horse. Like anything like an Alfa Sud or a Golf GTI, these guys, this is like 100 and change if you're lucky. A lot of them are Escort Mexico's like 90 horsepower or something. How often did you see a Capri 3 litre when we were young? Never, right? Now, I'm not saying there were a lot of Mark II Jags around when we were young, but there were still enough that you could have picked them up cheap. That banger, that rusty banger, if it was a manual transmission 3.8 car, or some people preferred the 3.4 because apparently they revved higher, that was still a meaningfully fast car, way faster than anything else. And I think I want to pay tribute to the Jaguar Mark II as being just that much of a BMW M5, like not just a little bit of a E39 M5, like a total E39 M5, like way faster than anything else. Nothing came close. 10 years later, it was still slaughtering everything else. The Capri 2.8 only had 160 horse. Alpha GTV 170. Sierra Cosworth less, probably 203, wasn't it? 205 with the I mean, it's not notional, right? Isn't
I thought they were.
I'm just saying.
I can't remember.
I'm just saying that your Mark II Jag, bloody fast car.
Oh yeah.
I've been collecting scratch-built slot cars. So as you know, my son has Scale Extric. Obviously, you have the Sierra Cosworths and the Capris and the Camaros and the Mustangs and the Formula One, all of that. As the Group C cars, that's what we've been doing recently. But and I think I've talked on the pod before about the difference between the motor that sits in line in the chassis and like has a drive shaft to the rear axle, or the ones where the motor sits right on the rear axle and the pinion drives a gear which is right by one of the rear wheels, if that makes sense. There's those ones where, so if you think of it, the difference is the axle with all the weights at the back, so it compromises the handling, but the direct drive, there's less of a power loss. So it's the preferred position for racing is surprisingly a compromise between the two, an angle, and they literally call them angle winders. And then you have to have like a special back axle that has a pinion gear that has a gear that's cut in a certain way. So are these scratch built models, like these are home built. This is where somebody's like got a motor, soldered together some wire, and then put the leads on and has created the thing absolutely from nothing. And then you can do Lexan bodies, and you can buy stickers to do the proper livery. I've really enjoyed this sort of new element of the hobby.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost irrelevant that most of them don't work. Some of them do work, but most of them don't work. And frustratingly, one of the ones I bought, the motor doesn't seem to work, but the chassis of the car is the housing of the motor, if that makes sense. The motor's not separate. The rotor was mounted in, there was one casting, which is mostly the chassis of the car, but at the back has a shape which allows you to hold the motor and a pair of magnets to create the motor. It's really a fascinating design that, of course, I can't hope to fix. Marvelous. All right, Mark. I appreciate your time.
Groovy. All right, well, take it easy, buddy.
You too. Ciao, ciao.
This episode has been brought to you by Grand Touring Motorsports as part of our Motoring Podcast Network. For more episodes like this, tune in each week for more exciting and educational content from organizations like the Exotic Car Marketplace, the Motoring Historian, Break Fix, and many others. If you'd like to support Grand Touring Motorsports and the Motoring Podcast Network, sign up for one of our many sponsorship tiers at www.patreon.com/GT Motorsports. Please note that the content, opinions, and materials presented and expressed in this episode are those of its creator, and this episode has been published with their consent. If you have any inquiries about this program, please contact the creators of this episode via email or social media as mentioned in the episode.